Hi, Dale coming to you from my garage again, and in this video I'm going to build another bed for my son's college roommate. When I was first asked to build a bed for a college student, this is what first came into my mind. Project done. Well, I think I can do a little better than that. My first thoughts were build a bed just like I built for my son a few videos ago. I'll leave a link below so you can check it out. But she came back and said, well, I want a platform bed with no headboard and no pine. So off to the lumber yard I went to get some 5/4 red oak. So stick around and I'll show you how I made this bed for her. Come on, let's go. It was a beautiful day in Atlanta, GA. The temp was 77, feeling like heaven. So I'm building outside today, just off my driveway. Turns out the weather was not that great. The humidity was at 98. Alright, enough of that. I went to my local lumber yard and bought all 5/4 red oak. Because I do not have a planer or a jointer, I bought all board surface 3 sides. That way the faces will still need some sanding, but are flat, and I have one straight edge to run along my Tablesaw fence. I start by ripping both bed frame sides as well as the bed frame head and foot to 4.5 inches. I put aside the skinny offcuts that are left as I'll use them later. I do love my backyard and working back there. The day also really did start out awesome, but after setting up outside and making these few cuts, I saw some pretty dark clouds coming in fast, so I moved back to my garage. I continue ripping boards down to size. I'm now ripping all of the bed slats to 4 inches, 10 in total, with these being just over 1 inch thick, 4 inches wide, and spaced about 3 inches apart. I don't think I'm going to need a center support, even though this is a queen size bed. With all boards ripped to width, I can now cross-cut to length. I start by using my crosscut sled to cut the bed frame foot and head pieces to 54 3/4 inches long and the side pieces to 74 3/4 inches long. That with the legs should put the platform to just a little larger than a queen size mattress, which of course is 60 inches by 80 inches or 153 centimeters by 203 centimeters, and of course I don't have to tell you 0.007575758 furlongs by 0.01010101 furlongs. For full disclosure, I did not make these legs. My son's roommate found these, really liked them, so she bought them and gave them to me to use. I want to attach the bed frame to the legs with a 1/2 inch reveal. I've used dowels in the past and really like using them. I love my little Rockler doweling jigs, but they only work if joining flush. They will not work if a reveal is wanted. I bought this Jessem Doweling Jig, which is extremely versatile and allows for joining with a reveal very quickly, easily, accurately, and repeatable. It was fairly pricey though, but I will get a ton of use out of it. To set up for drilling the dowel holes, I first set the Jessem jig to 1/2 inch, which will just about center the holes in my 5/4 boards, which are 1 1/16 inch thick. I then mark the board and the leg so that I can easily remember which sides are to match up when drilling the dowel holes. Now I make sure that I'm referencing the jig on the marked side of the board, clamp it, and drill the dowel holes. This part of the bed really isn't the part that's going to be supporting all of the weight of the bed, so using all 5 dowel holes may have been a bit of overkill, but this jig works so well that I figured why not. I drill the holes in the end grain of the foot piece of the frame. Since I want a 1/2 inch reveal, all I need to do is adjust the Jessem jig from 1/2 inch to 1 inch, which will push the holes another 1/2 inch in, thus giving me my 1/2 inch reveal. Then I simply make sure I'm referencing off the side of the leg with the mark, clamp it, and drill it. The Jessem jig really is that easy to use. Jessem's not a sponsor and didn't send it for free. I bought it with my own money, and while it is a bit pricey, I'm glad I did because it really is a dream to use so far, at least for this project. Now rinse and repeat 3 more times so that the foot and headboards can be securely and permanently attached to the legs. Of course, my workflow would have been much better if I would have drilled all holes in the end grain set at 1/2 inch, then adjust the Jessem to 1 inch and drilled all the holes in the legs. Instead, I bounced back and forth between 1/2 inch and 1 inch. Here's a tip and something I noticed that you may want to watch is that the sawdust from drilling was getting caught in the drill bit flute against the stop collar. You should check it periodically and clean it out, or it can cause the drill bit to not go all the way into the wood and reach the stop collar. You can see here during my test fit that the dowels line up perfectly. I did need to use a bit of persuasion as I bought cheapo dowels that were a bit too fat to easily fit in the holes. I did buy different dowels later, and more on that in a bit. Before I permanently secure the head and footboards to the legs, I round off all sides using my cordless palm router. This will make it much more comfortable to the hand and legs when you're sitting on the edge of the bed. As well, it'll help keep the corners from getting any kind of chip or tear out during normal use. And now for the first glue up. I initially intended to glue both legs to the footboard at one time. Since I was never a Boy Scout growing up, I can say that I was very, very unprepared for this glue up. That and the fact that I went ultra cheap on my dowels made it so that the first glue up got very tense, very fast. Once the glue hit those dowels, they swelled up just as they should, but swelled up quite quickly, and they were already a tight fit, so there was no way I was going to get those boards connected to the leg tightly, not without help. To top it off, I didn't have clamps long enough to spread the entire length, so I was going to do that little dance clamping clamp to clamp. Well, because I got very stressed and once I put the glue on the wood, I was on the clock, I moved the camera aside, called my son out to help, and we were able to clamp it all together, but it was really, really tough. Once done, I was way too stressed to move on, so I just did the one leg and went inside and took a bit of a break. In the end, the leg did get securely attached. After going inside my house and having a good cry into my pillow, drinking some chamomile tea, all while diffusing some essential oils into the air, I feel much, much better. I went to the store and purchased some different dowels as well as a couple of pipe clamps so my next glue up would not be so stressful. I also tried microwaving the cheapo dowels, and I have to say that did help. I'm not exactly sure what that does, but I heard that tip somewhere that I don't remember where. I think it also said you could put the dowel pins in the oven as well. I guess that takes some of the moisture out of the dowel pins, causing them to shrink a bit. Now the second glue up I was very prepared for and was able to glue both legs to the headboard of the bed frame, no problem at all. It went very smooth, and having the pipe clamps already set up make this glue up like rainbows and unicorns. This bed needs to be able to be disassembled so the sides will not be glued to the legs. Instead, I'm going to try these bed frame brackets from Rockler. They have a single screw for attaching the sides to the legs. The reviews I read said they were quite strong, so I'm going to give them a try. So I went out and I bought them. Beds are always easier to put together if you have two people, but I wanted to make this easy for one person, so I'm going to drill a couple of dowel holes in each leg and each side piece. These will not be glued in place and are not for strength. They're simply to help align the bed sides to the legs and hold them in place while you attach the brackets. Turns out those alignment dowel pins are having an immediate payback. I'm using them to help dry fit the sides on and clamp them down so that I can take final measurements to confirm the bed is square and the right size. I have my son helping, but the pins made it really easy to hold them in place. Rather than trying to take perfect measurements to attach the bracket, I thought the easier way was to put some tape on the inside piece, then tightly attach the outside piece. I can then simply place the bracket in place and attach it to the leg with the remaining tape. I can then remove the outer piece, allowing me access to drill pilot holes and attach the bracket to the leg with screws. After removing the tape, I could reattach the outer piece, drill pilot holes, and attach it to the side of the bed frame with screws. At that point, I can detach the bracket and remove the bedside piece completely, allowing me room to access the 2 other screw holes to firmly attach it to the leg. This turned out to be really easy, and with no measuring to do, it was hard for me to mess up, even though I really tried. Those skinny cutoffs from the very beginning can now be used as supports for the bed slats. I ripped them down just to clean up the rough edges and then hold them in place. This is where I see that it will be hard to get a screwdriver to the brackets we just put in. So I mark an angle which will allow a screwdriver to access, and then using a handsaw, I cut that angle out. Now I use glue and a few brad nails to attach the slat support pieces to the inside of the bed frame side pieces. These should be attached so that the slats are either flush with the top of the side pieces or just a little below. I need to cut a lot of small pieces for slat spacers. To do this safely, I clamp a stop block to my sled. I then put another piece between the stop block and the piece I'm going to be cutting. I then remove the piece between the stop block and the piece I'm cutting, use a hold down, and make the cut. This keeps the small piece from being stuck between the stop block and the blade, which would surely throw that piece right back at me. This is still working with a very small piece, so if you're not comfortable doing this, then don't. Use a bandsaw, a scroll saw, or any other method. I use this method to first cut out blocks to the correct width of the spacers. From each block, I'll get 3 or 4 spacers. If you are not comfortable with those cuts, then you're certainly not going to be comfortable with these. I use the same method, but now I move the stop block even closer to the blade, turn those blocks 90 degrees, and cut 3/4 inch slat spacers from those blocks. I need about 20 or so. I cut about 24 or 25 of those spacers, and now I'm going to show you one more method to both cutting the main blocks and then cutting the spacers from those blocks. But before I tell you what's different in this method, I want to see if you can figure out what's different. You see it yet? Okay, I'll tell you. These are cut to the correct size. Yep, after cutting all of those blocks in the first batch, I saw that I was off about 1/4 inch, so I had to cut them again. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Math is hard. I want to make sure that when I install the slat spacers that I leave a little room so that the slats can easily be put in place and removed, but not so much that they move around. For that, I'm going to use 4 playing cards. I put the first slat in place and then a small bit of glue where the spacer will go. For the first slat, I place the spacer snug against it and then put 2 brad nails into the spacer to hold it while the glue cures. I do this on both sides. To place the next slat in place, I first take the 4 playing cards and use them to create a small amount of space between the slat spacer and the slat. I do this on both sides and continue this for all slats. This will ensure that the slats can be put in place and removed easily. You may also notice that I put a small chamfer on the slats. This is mainly so I don't get slivers when moving this around and installing it. I used a dark walnut stain and a couple coats of water-based polyurethane to finish. I gave a very light sand of 800 grit sandpaper between the coats of poly. So here it is. This is the first time that I've used hardwood in a project, and I gotta say I really like it. Don't get me wrong, I really like using dimensional lumber for these also, as it's really inexpensive and I really like the way it looks. But I really did enjoy working with this red oak, and I will definitely be using other hardwoods in future projects. If you like this video, please hit that thumbs up button and consider subscribing if you haven't done that before. And if you have any questions or comments, or maybe you saw something I could have done better, leave a comment below. I love hearing from you and I answer almost every comment. Until next time, see ya.
it super tight right now, but enough to hold it. This